I once attended a Tony Robbins seminar out in Hawaii, and that was back in 1989. And if you don't know who Anthony Robbins is, he's a exceptional motivational speaker, and I spent 2 weeks with him on the island of Maui with about 850 other people. He had us walking on fire and jumping off telephone poles, and had all these phenomenal speakers, and sent us gave us an apple and a quarter, and said we had to go to another island, spend the night, and come back without any money, just with our power to persuade and add value to someone else. I mean, the guy's outrageous, but my biggest takeaway from that seminar was what was called the perfect day exercise. And as I look back on it, it's impacted the rest of my life. And the perfect day was he put all of us in a big room, all 850 of us, into this room. And and Tony Robbins is a phenomenal speaker, and he just has a way of getting you excited or calming you down. And he used I believe a hypnotic technique to calm everyone down, and to envision what it might be like to live our own perfect day. And he walked you through waking up in the morning, and where you were, and who you were with, and what clothes you were wearing, and what it smelled like, what it sounded like, and what you had for breakfast, what your house looks like, and ultimately, when you walk out the door, where you live, and what you would go and do for your career. And well, forget what's practical or possible, or what other people might think. The exercise was simply to get a clear vision of your perfect day, and living through that day. And in that exercise, I was on a tropical island in a little house by the ocean. I could hear the ocean. I could smell the salt. And I had a island girlfriend, and I was in a beautiful cabin, and I wore tropical clothes, and we had banana pancakes for breakfast. And I envisioned all this during this exercise, and I could hear birds singing outside, and ultimately, when I went outside and I looked out the window, I could see a big sailboat out there, and I envisioned taking these tourists on wonderful adventures and scuba diving and sailing and beach combing, and they thanked me at the end of the day and paid me great money to do that. And for a couple of years after that seminar, I thought that was just a great fantasy. And I didn't really place that much stock in it, but the vision was implanted in my mind. And after a few life changes, and I started thinking, what am I going to do next? All of a sudden, I woke up at 3 in the morning, and that vision came back to me, clear as the day I got it. And it was like, wow, that's actually possible. I could go live on a tropical island. And so I started the very next day. Once I got that excited feeling, I started following that breadcrumb trail. And I went to a bookstore. I didn't have much money. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I went to the bookstore and I got a book on Costa Rica and Honduras, the Bay Islands of Honduras. And I read that for a night or two, and I got more excited, and I went to a travel agency. That was back before the internet, so I went to a travel agent to get brochures, and I was looking at different literature, and the travel agent said, hey, why don't you go talk to this judge? He's a really nice guy, and he owns a condo on Roatan. And so I call up the judge and tell him who I am, and he says, oh, well, okay, let's go to lunch and we'll talk about it. So the judge gives me the phone number of a lady who owns Anthony's Key Resort, or she's a manager of it, down in Roatan. And she says, look, slow down and go and get your scuba diver instructor license. And if you had that license, you could live on any island, because most of those islands need instructors, and there's not that level of education on tropical islands like that. And so I cooled my jets a little. I went and got that certification, I did dive master and dive medic and oxygen provider and then instructor level scuba diving. And the week that I got that, my instructors said, "Hey, now that you're certified, why don't you come with us to New Orleans to the DEMA convention, which is the Diver Equipment Manufacturers Convention in New Orleans." And it's a giant convention with every kind of scuba diving underwater toy you can think of. I mean, it's unbelievably cool. You got underwater, dive equipment. You got underwater video. You got underwater robotics. I mean, you got everything out there. And I spent 5 days just combing that whole convention hall looking for a job. And mostly I concentrated on the Caribbean because my small vision was to maybe get a dive instructor's job in Cozumel or Cayman, chase girls and drink beer on the beach. That was pretty much the vision that I had when I went into that convention hall. But I didn't find any job in the Caribbean, and so I started venturing to other parts of the world within that convention hall. And I met a wonderful couple from Quito, Ecuador, and they own 9 tourist yachts in the Galapagos Islands. Eduardo and Dolores Diaz owned Quasar Nautica. And I spoke some Spanish, and they told me that they were needing more dive instructor level people and people who taught first aid, and we hit it off. And the next thing I knew, I was closing up my house in Austin and moving to the Galapagos Islands. And very shortly after I got there, I woke up one morning, and I was living in a little cabin. And I could hear the ocean and smell the ocean. I had a little island girlfriend, and I don't know if we had banana pancakes or not, but I walked out the door and went down the beach to a huge 2-masted trimaran called the Lammerlaw, which is a full dive, long-range dive ship, and I was the dive guide on it. And I took these wonderful people on amazing tours, and the dream had become real. The vision in my mind was bigger and better than I ever imagined it. And so I encourage you out there, whatever these visions are that come to your mind, you're not stuck. You can go do whatever you want, and it does happen.